I, of course, only got through 10 minutes of the video. That guy really dug up.
You can skip through it and kind of pretty much save yourself a lot of time, but what's it? Why?
So the cool thing was first he built that.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool. So, yeah.
Because I'm working on it. Get more money.
Yeah.
What's this?
See, if I would have had the money, I'd just take some idea.
Not only did he put metal aside, yeah, never engaged steel, so he reinforced it with concrete. So there is as well.
And it was kind of fun. Like it wasn't like.
It's halfway.
But go look at the this channel. Because he actually documented it, going through the whole thing, up, it's a summary of it, like this. But he's got a lot of other stuff on his channel. He's got some millionaires. When they get this subscribers. So he paid for his tunnel.
He's so that thing he finds out that was leading back and forth. That was cool.
Oh, let there be peace.
You jumped it there. Oh, thank you.
Morning, Ellen. Morning. Wait, for Bill.
It was underneath you. I'm sorry.
Nice.
But I just had to resist
I
the.
see you over
You can open the door.
there.
How is it that you know all that stuff?
Yeah.
My stuff.
Oh. You should know all that.
Nice for gesture.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Your cousins are a bad influence on you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I know. I'm getting old. I'm getting old. My eyesight gets worse and worse as well.
Good morning, everybody. We'll be singing out of the Heavenly Highway hymnal. 304.
That's what I turned to.
304. While traveling through this world of sorrow, I'm on my way to glory land. I'll not turn back for some tomorrow. My trials here I'll understand. I want to know more about my Jesus. I want to know more about my Lord. I want to know more about that mansion I'm going to receive as my reward. I want to know more about that homeland. I need to go there someday, somehow. And after I reach that heavenly city, I need to know more than I know now. I'm glad I For through his blood he set me free. Though rough the road, I shall not waver. For some glad day his face I'll see. I want to know more about my Jesus. I want to know more about my Lord. I want to know more about that mansion I'm gonna receive as my reward. I want to know more about that homeland. I mean to go there someday, somehow. And after I reach that heavenly city, I need to know more than I know now. Let's stand and sing the last. He promised when his soul ascended, I'm coming back, the Lord did say. If on his promise you depended, on wings of love you'll soar away. I want to know more about my Jesus. I want to know more about my Lord. I want to know more about that mansion I'm gonna receive as my reward. I want to know more about that homeland. I need to go there someday, somehow. And after I reach that heavenly city, I need to know more than I know now.
Morning. Good to be in the house of the Lord this morning. Remember those that are still on the road of travel, the Lord will watch over and bring them here safely. And let's remember one another in prayer and for all the different things that we're all going through. At this time, Brother Eric, would you, if you would you open us in a word of prayer this time, please?
Brother and sister Cook at this time and they get better. And we ask whatever you've laid on Derek's heart, Brother Derek's heart, that you let our ears be open and have him deliver his word to you. Thank you. We ask this in the name. Amen.
First Peter chapter 4. My devotional thoughts I came up with a little bit over a week ago, and they're going to be in line with what Brother Nick brought in his message last Sunday. And when he brought the thoughts out, it has to do with the idea of the changes that we're going through. And then the idea of the new norm is the changes that are happening right now. And instead of abandoning the thought and going with something else, I just decided I'd just continue on with them. You know, I don't like change in my life. And I think probably has a lot to do with the way I was brought up. I'll just share some of my upbringings with you. When I was 7 years old, my parents got a divorce. I remember the time where they split up. And after that, I remember I lived with my mother. She had custody of us kids at the time, me and my two sisters. I lived with my mother for a while, and then I would live with my father for a while. And I remember one time I was in the 6th grade living with my father, that he actually moved me 6 times in the 6th grade alone. I went to 6 different elementary schools in the 6th grade alone. I remember, well, at 13, my mother took her life. So I ended up living with my father permanently from that point on. And my father also, when I was going through high school, I went to 6 different high schools, believe it or not. So I had a lot of change as a young man in my life. I told my children, I've given examples. I say, you will never in your lifetime live what I lived. I've lived 10 of your lives, and I'm not exaggerating. I experienced what most people would experience in a lifetime, at least 10 times over, just as a young man before the age of 21. So as I grew older and I moved into the house that I live in right now, it's the same house that my parents bought back in 1963. And my mother wanted in the custody battle. So when she died without a will. So it got left to me and my two sisters. I eventually ended up buying them out. But as a young man, by the age of 21, I wanted stability. And I look for stability, and I provided stability for my family. My children, they grew up in the same house I grew up in. They don't know anything else except when they moved out finally and got their own place, but they went to the same school district all their life. So they know what it is to have a stable life, but I don't like change. And I don't know if anybody, that many people that really do. Some people like to have things change up, but all that to say, what we're going to read here in 1 Peter, the 4th chapter, he said, "Beloved, do not be surprised with the fiery ordeals." This is in verse 12. "Do not be surprised with the fiery ordeal or trials or temptation," it could be translated, "which come upon you for your testing, as though some strange things were happening to you. But to the degree that you suffer, to the degree that you share the sufferings of Christ, keep on rejoicing." And that's a thought I want to drive home this morning, is in the devotional, let's keep on rejoicing. "In order that in the revelation of his glory, you may rejoice with exaltation. If you are reviled or approached in the name of Christ, you are blessed, because the Spirit of God because the Spirit of glory and of God rests upon you." So whatever, we all deal with different things in our life, and we have been, some more than others. I mean, Brother Nick, he gets phone calls and texts all the time with what all of us are dealing with in our lives. And he's going through things himself. Remember him in your prayers. But just to mention a few I jotted down. If we are suffering persecution, keep on rejoicing. If we lose our job, keep on rejoicing. If we have health problems, and we do, keep on rejoicing. If we have family problems, keep on rejoicing. If we lose a loved one, and we have, keep on rejoicing. If we lose church members, whether it be to the world or whether it be to a sister church, let us keep on rejoicing. In verse 15, Peter says, "Make sure that none of you suffer as a murderer or a thief or an evildoer or a troublesome meddler." We can create our own infliction. We can self-induce it. I have done so many times in my life. You had a boss. I'm sure many of us got mad at our boss before and decided we're going to tell our boss off. Well, that's self-induced. Don't be surprised if you lose your job. So the idea, what Peter's saying, if you're going to commit murder, if you're going to steal and you end up in jail, don't let that be named among God's people. That's self-induced infliction. The reality is, and this is the thought I wanted to also bring out, the changes, the persecution, the trials, the temptation, that has been the norm for God's people. It is the peace, it is the stability, it is knowing what tomorrow brings. That has really been the exception that we have experienced in our lifetime. We need to understand that God's people for the thousands of years have suffered persecution, trials, testing. That has been the norm. What we're about to experience and what we are experiencing is what has been the norm. We just need to get used to the fact that what we have experienced in Christ, what we have experienced as citizens of this country, that's the exception. So to whatever degree that we suffer, let us rejoice. Let us give praise to the Lord. Let us keep on rejoicing. Thank him for the days of peace in our life. Give him honor and glory. But remember that the persecution, the trials that come upon us as God's people, that is the norm. With this, that's all I have.
Start at page 300. 300. There will be a happy meeting in heaven, I know, when we see the many loved ones we've known here below. Gather on the blessed hilltops with hearts all aglow. That will be a glad reunion day. Glad day, oh wonderful day. Glad day, oh glorious day. There with all the holy angels and loved ones to stay. That will be a glad reunion day. There within the holy city we'll sing and rejoice, praising Christ the blessed Savior with heart and with voice. Tell him how we came to love him and make him our choice. That will be a glad reunion day. Glad day, oh wonderful day. Glad day, oh glorious day. There with all the holy angels and loved ones to stay. That will be a glad reunion day. When we live a million years in that wonderful place, basking in the love of Jesus, beholding his face, it will seem but just a moment of praising his grace. That will be a glad reunion day. Glad day, oh wonderful day. Glad day, oh glorious day. There with all the holy angels and loved ones to stay. That will be a glad reunion day.
Good morning, everybody. Encouraging devotional. Thank Derek for that. And I think he knows firsthand that I'm not a very discouraged person. I don't get discouraged easily, I should say. I'm not easily discouraged. But it's sometimes you get discouraged, and there's things that go on in our lives and in church or in our sister churches or at work and stuff. And these things tend to take up more of our concern than they probably should. But whenever things happen at church, it's easy to get discouraged, and you see people move away, the possibility of other people leaving and church matters. And so I really appreciate his encouraging devotional to keep on rejoicing. And that's, just our calling to find the good in things and to praise God for the blessings that he's bestowed upon us and keep on praising and serving him. That being said, unfortunately, we have a few out today. And so our prayers are with them. Sister Cook got what Brother Dave had, and so now she's down and sick, so they've been through it. I'm hoping, though, once you have the COVID and you have the flu, that all those antibodies will make you strong, and that they'll bounce back from this stronger and healthy for it. But keep them in your prayers. Paul and Asher are sick as well, so remember them. They won't be here with us. And any and all that are sick. Again, we're kind of coming out of that as a church, but there's still a lot of sickness out there, so let's remember those. Any other prayer requests? Yeah, Albert.
Keep in prayer, Rick and Holly, getting close to that due date, and you're kind of nervous. I am. Yeah, she's calm. I'm nervous, but I've got a baby coming. But keep them in prayer, and keep my daughter Brittany in Florida in prayer. She's gonna have an MRI on her neck. We found something there that, they don't know exactly, they're gonna have an MRI test. And Tracy's sister came down with COVID, keep her in prayer.
Okay, just remember these prayer requests. Obviously, Blake and Holly, as they approach that due date, and Albert's daughter, who has a spot on her neck, and hopefully the MRI comes back, and everything is clear and fine. And then Tracy's sister has COVID. Any other prayer requests? Yeah, Becky.
Imagine a kid and did them to circulate the whole sick, and they're several weeks out, and she called me falling, and they just can't get better. They went to the doctor, then they got something from a doctor office, and then it just can't get any better. So just keep them in prayers, even a message or text, call, just several. I'm sure it's appreciated.
Okay. So remember Anijah and her children, as they're still struggling with some illness that kind of keep circulating through the family, and that tends to happen. So remember them in your prayers. Sharon, your hand went up.
I have a doctor's appointment coming up this week for the first next. Hopefully they can find out what's still going on.
Yeah, we had the scan done, right? But now we need to find out with the doctor's appointment what they found. And so remember Sharon, she has a doctor's appointment coming up. Anybody else? Eric.
Just keep Julie in your prayers. She actually, hopefully she's not getting what I had, but she was kind of starting to feel a little down today. She kind of started last night. It's kind of Kate seems to be doing better. I actually went to urgent care on Thursday and got some steroids and see it. I just can't seem to shake my symptoms either. So I don't know if the steroids are working yet or not. So
They're gonna make you strong.
I was actually disappointed because I haven't seen anything happen. They stole my jokes.
Well, I'm sorry. That being said, let's remember them as they continue to recover. Julie, getting sick. Eric, still struggling with some respiratory things, right? It's in your lungs, coughing. And on that matter, keep Stephanie's mom in your prayers. They had the flu. It's kind of the trend up there. She had the flu, and so did her father, and then they got COVID. So it was just like 2-3 weeks of back to back. She's still struggling because though she's testing negative, and she's got laryngitis, she's got some infection there, and so she's on some really strong antibiotics. They did this antibiotic booster thing. I don't know if it's steroids, but they said antibiotic booster. So she's just trying to get out of this, and so keep her in your prayers. She's struggling to get healthy. Anybody else? And I should have done this first, but that's okay. Announcement wise, next week we have a trustees meeting. We'll do that between services. The following Sunday, we have a Christmas lunch. So it's going to be bring your best dish, followed by a gift exchange, and that is on Christmas Day. My father will be here on the 1st of January. We have, as of right now, Lord's Supper on the 8th. I'll bring that up in a second, and then a work day on the 14th. But I would like to move, but we've already kind of penciled in the Lord's Supper for the 8th. But we have one person that can't be here, so I would like to move it to the 15th, but then I don't want to bump someone else out. So let me know if you have an issue with the 15th. If everybody is fine with the 15th, I'd like to move the Lord's Supper to then, so that, again, I want to make accommodations. If someone can't be here and they voice it to me, and we want to make accommodations, because I would like everyone to be here for Lord's Supper. It's something we take as a body as we celebrate our relationship with Christ and his work and his what he's given and doing for us and what he will do. We want to do that as a body. I want everyone here. So it is right now on the 8th, but I'd like to move it to the 15th. If there's no objections, let me know. Just again, send me a text or let me know between church if you have a problem with that. With no objections, I'll announce that we're moving the date to the 15th. That's it for me. If there's no other words, then we'll have our morning offering.
When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, what a glory he sheds on our way. While we do his good will, He abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey. Let's turn to page number 2. Number 2. Walking in sunlight all of my journey, over the mountains, through the deep vale. Jesus has said, I'll never forsake thee, promise divine that never can fail. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing his praises, Jesus is mine. Shadows around me, shadows above me, never can steal my Savior and guide. He is the light, in him is no darkness, ever I'm walking close to his side. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing his praises, Jesus is mine. In the bright sunlight, ever rejoicing, pressing my way to mansions above, singing his praises, gladly I'm walking in sunlight of love. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing his praises, Jesus is mine. 277. 277. Oh, come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Sing, choirs of angels, sing in exaltation. Oh, sing all ye bright hosts of heaven above. Glory to God, glory in the highest. Oh, come. Yea, Lord, we greet thee for this happy morning. Jesus, to thee be all glory given. Word of the Father, now in flesh appearing. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him, Christ the Lord.
Let's bow our heads and go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you once again. Thank you for all your many blessings. We thank you for this church body to serve you in. We thank you for your Son whom came and died in our place, Lord. We thank you for this day that you've given us to serve you, and that those that are here. We pray for those that aren't, and may you be with them and their needs, whether it be physical or spiritual, Lord. Bring them back to us. We, at this time, ask you for your blessings on this preaching hour. May you be with me and my words, and may your Spirit move through me, and may it move through our hearts, and may you reveal to us your will and your desire for us. Convict our hearts of the things you'd have us to be convicted of. And again, we praise your name and give you all the glory. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Let's open our Bibles this morning. Now, let's go to Genesis 9, just for a verse. We're going to be in Genesis 11. For those that are homesick, we've had some power issues this morning, and we had some power going in and out, so that might happen if the stream goes out. Just send me a text, and maybe we'll try to get everybody back on, but it might happen sometime. We'll probably know, because if it's the power issue, we'll see the lights flicker, come off and come on. I got a call from Rick this morning. He's like, is the power going off there too? Yeah, power's going off here. We had issues there. We had issues here. And so I'm sure it's somewhere out at the street, but we'll see how that goes. This morning, we're going to start off again by reading a verse in Genesis 9. We'll be talking a little bit, as I said, I announced on Wednesday that we'd most likely be talking about the Tower of Babel. We're going to talk about that this morning. Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Some other things that he says there, but that was for Noah and his descendants, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and their descendants. Their idea there was to be fruitful. It's a blessing what God did for Noah and his children. Amazingly, how quickly the earth began to be populated with men after the Lord judged this earth and caused a flood that wiped out most people. But God blessed them with the fruitfulness. And he did that at other times when he sent his people into Egypt during a great famine, Abraham and his 12 sons and their families. God blessed them and gave them this fruitfulness that they might have many children. And boy, did they ever. They had many. I've said this before, and I should probably go back and do the math, but I calculated out the generations and the amount of people that went into Egypt and the amount that came out, and it was something like 12 plus sons per man. Each man had an average of like 12 sons. And so also you have to match that with many daughters, because, that's the way that it works. Don't have 12 sons. You don't just have one wife, you have many wives. So for every 12 sons, there had to be probably 18 daughters or, something along those lines. Anyways, there was a lot of a blessing. There was a lot of children. And so Noah, his children were blessed with this fruitfulness to have many children. And there's also a commandment there. And God had a desire for man to populate this earth. So there is a commandment. Be fruitful, which was the blessing. You are fruitful, therefore multiply and fill this earth with your offspring. And so there was a desire for God to by God for them to populate the earth. And some of them traveled east and settled down in Shinar. Genesis chapter 11. Let's look there. Verse 1. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. It came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. This place was between the Tigris and the Euphrates. We don't know how many people, it seemed like a good amount of them. We know that it was probably at least the offspring of Ham. You look back at Genesis 10, look at verse 8. Now, Cush became the father of Nimrod, and Cush was the son of Ham. So Ham had a son named Cush. Now, Cush became the father of Nimrod. He was a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel. So we see some of the cities mentioned there, but Babel seemed to be a place that became this part of the land of Nimrod and his family and his offspring. So I don't know that it was just Nimrod, but regardless of how many, there was a good amount of people. They came and they started to, they went to the same place and they settled down here in Shinar. So verse 3, as we continue reading in Genesis 11, verse 3, they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and burn them together thoroughly. And they used brick for stone and they used tar for mortar. They said, come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let us build for ourselves a name. Otherwise, we will be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. And we sometimes imagine this as if they're trying to literally, and maybe, I'm not always a very literal person the way I take expressions and people's intentions. And I see a lot of meanings in the Bible and not all of it's very literal. Maybe they were trying to build into heaven, but it seems like their motivation wasn't so much to reach heaven. It was to build a name for themselves. They wanted to build up something great, something amazing, a landmark that would be recognized by all and to be in awe, be awestruck by this great building, this great tower, this city that they built up. And so, we sometimes imagine like the spiraling circle of a tower that just would stretch all the way out of this atmosphere. I don't know if that was so much their intention. I don't know if they understood. Obviously, they don't understand things like atmosphere and all those things. And they didn't, what heaven and building up was. But their motivation was one from the source of pride. It wasn't of godly intention. It wasn't to build up something for God. They weren't doing it for his glory. They were doing it for their own glory. And this is something that we've always struggled with as mankind. They didn't want to be scattered. That was partly what God wanted. Be scattered, go out, fill the earth, and then a good portion of them, they hunkered down and they wanted to kind of unite there and build up something great and do something marvelous, not for God's glory, but for their own. As I said, their motive was pride, as it says, to make a home and to reach the heavens. And so they wanted to do something great. And as I said, the majority of people, I think, have the same ambition in life. They want to build a name for themselves, a reputation. People are driven by certain carnal desires. It's not one of God's glory, but one for personal glory, all from a place of pride and wanting to lift themselves up. Humanism, as I talk about all the time, it's what the story's about. Humanism, mankind elevating themselves instead of elevating God. Men are inspired and driven for things like fame and fortune. It's an expression we use, fame and fortune. All want fame and fortune. I mean, it's a natural thing, I think, in this flesh, to desire to be well known, to have a name, to be famous to some level within some circles, and to have wealth, money, fame, power, possessions. We desire these things in our flesh. We also desire entertainment, fleshly enjoyment, things that are self enjoys. And almost all of this, all of it really is a matter of lifting ourselves up. And again, not pointing at you, but looking at mankind. All of it is about elevating ourselves above God. And so this Tower of Babel has a very strong visual for me about man building something for themselves, to build themselves up into the state of godlikeness, godhood, and a place that men recognize and are, kind of look and think highly of a people because of their accomplishments. And so many people, and you wouldn't have to think very long to start naming people in your life that are driven by these things, accomplishments, and what they've done. And some people aren't even, it doesn't take very long after you get to know them until they start telling you about the things that they are and have done. They like to share that with you. And when people talk about themselves, I got to tell you, it's the most off-putting thing to me. It's not when people want to tell you about their kids and tell you about their church or their family. These are blessings from God that who doesn't want to talk about. Even then, I try not to overwhelm people with the things that give me joy. But when people want to talk about who they are, what they've accomplished, their education, the things that they've been in the past, most of it usually are fabrications and half-truths. But for those, even regardless of whether it's a lie or not, it's off-putting thing. Who wants to hear someone brag and share all that they've done and how smart they are and what they've done? No one wants to hear it. And so it's one of the more off-putting things. But that being said, regardless of what people and how much they verbalize it and vocalize it, most people are driven by these things, whether they share it with you or not. They're driven by things, by accomplishments, by possessions, by their own merits. This is nothing new under the sun. We've seen it. We go all the way back over 4,000 years. We see it here. You go all the way to the Garden of Eden. Is that not right? Come back to Satan's temptation, what he lies to Eve with. The serpent said to the woman, "You surely will not die, for God knows that in the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." It's the desire. It's humanism. It's always been our bane. It's always been our Achilles heel. It's the thing that destroys lives and lead people away from God. It's our greatest adversary in our flesh, is to elevate ourselves, to prefer us over God. And that is our great enemy. It is in us all, this pride, this desire. And we need to identify it. And as God's people, make sure that we keep it in check. Bible makes it very clear about pride. It's a very simple subject. It teaches it over and over again. We see it many times. Pride comes before the fall. And God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. So our attitude as God's people is to put off this flesh and to put on Christ by humbling ourselves as he did. But we see this story, and there's a lot to say on this about pride. That's the source of their desire. It's what drives mankind. It's what's driving not just individuals, but driving the collectiveness of mankind. We are driven by advancing and elevating and becoming great. It's what we are driven by in society. Mankind are never satisfied. Look at the condition of the earth. Look at where we stand. Look at the things we've developed and created and built. And man is not satisfied. We're not satisfied with what we built. And that should be a clue for mankind. There is no satisfaction in our works. It should be clear and evident. Look at all that we've done. Look at the pyramids. Look at the skyscrapers. Look at all the wonderful things we've built. Look at the technologies we've created. Look at the medicines we've produced. And yet we are not satisfied. We continue to build and invent and create because none of it satisfies this life. It leaves us wanting, always. And no matter how much riches you obtain, no matter how much fame you have, no one has said, I'm satisfied. Most of the time, the more they gain, the more they need to feed that part of them. And so they need more, they need more, they need more. And mankind as a collectiveness, mankind are driven just the same way as individuals are. We want more, we're never satisfied, so we continue to build, create, and invent. We want more, never satisfied. Though we live in the richest time period, and though we have more today than any people have ever had on earth, significantly more, we are absolutely, I don't know that we've ever been sadder as a planet. I don't know of a time where people have been more disgruntled and angry and unsatisfied with their existence than today. Just turn on your TV. People are miserable. and they hate each other, and they're unsatisfied with their governments, and they're revolting, and they're striking, and what's it called? Protesting. Everyone's unsatisfied. Again, that's the new norm today. Everybody in civil unrest constantly. Everyone angry and trying to cancel other people. And it's all we see. People wanting to cancel. Someone says something that offended me. Remove that person. Again, we see so much anger and hostility and sadness all around us and on our TVs. But that's the result of the world we've created. We're not satisfied. And we think that more is going to get us there, but we'll never be satisfied. So come, let us build up for ourselves a city. That's what we read in verse 4. The Lord has a response to this in verse 5. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they began to do. And now nothing which they propose to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language so that they will not understand one another's speech. And we'll come back here in a little while. In fact, it's going to be a bit until we come back to here. God makes a very strong statement here. God recognizes early on, and I don't know that they had very much. I don't know how much they had built. I don't know how far they've got. But God recognizes kind of a problem as man working together, a good percentage, a good amount of mankind, working together towards the same goal. And he recognizes this is a problem for my timeline, for the things that I have prepared for mankind. They're not doing what I say and scattering. They don't want to be scattered. They want to build up this place and build up a name. And in this current status, as mankind all working together, look at a good amount of them, to the same end, nothing is impossible. That's something to really stop and consider. What is possible? I don't know that they had realized a whole lot. I don't think they had electricity. They didn't have cars. They didn't have air conditioning and hot running water. They didn't have anything close to what we have. So God saw what man was capable of. He always knew, but he said, they're working together and not scattering, not fighting and warring against each other. And they just all work together to the same end. Nothing is impossible. And that's something to really stop and consider. What is it that God doesn't want us to uncover? They had no clue. Babylonia, these people of Babel, they had no clue what mankind was capable of. And look at what we have today. And yet I say this, most people, we're just beginning to see that we are able to do things that we once thought was science fiction and impossible. And yet we're realizing today with our advancements, nothing is impossible. And we'll talk about that in just a second, but it's amazing the things that we're realizing right now. And we've talked about technology many times here. And we'll talk about it just for a little bit again today. We still don't. They had no clue what man was capable of. God did. We still have no idea. And we still hear, oh, they did that. They're doing that. What? And again, we're about to reach a point in advancement that there's no turning back when technology propels itself. And I think there's the Tower of Babel, and we'll talk about that in a second. Something God declared to man thousands of years ago. You know, these are things that God says about man thousands of years ago. So God came down and he stopped it. We'll talk about how he stopped it and the confusion in a little bit. God saw what we were capable of and he stopped it because God has a plan. This was a problem because God has a fullness of time. Thousands of years ago, well, God has a plan, and that was involving Christ, his church. And again, not until the Lord has a desire for him to return, for Christ to return, will he return. God has a plan for the fullness of time, and he has been orchestrating the events of the earth ever since to kind of make sure that things are delayed on his timetable. How does he do that? Well, he gives us free will. There's some things that we don't understand about God. It's hard to understand this. Man has free will. We get to choose how we live our life, and yet God is still in some way involved with mankind to make sure that things don't happen before he's ready for them to happen. I think we read about how God places kings and rulers. I think that's how he does it. That's a big part of how he does it. Maybe he inspires men Maybe he prevents men from developing technologies until he ordains it and allows it, but placing kings and rulers in their place. And God has placed these men and women in places of positions of power that his will be done. And so thousands of years later, we're approaching some things that I think God was stopping. I don't think he was stopping a building. I don't think he was stopping a tower. I don't think he was worried about the tower. We know enough now to know that the tower wasn't going to get to heaven. That's not something he was concerned with. So why did God delay it? Why did God stop it? As I said, it wasn't the building. We have skyscrapers today. We build all sorts of things. God has allowed. There's be no reason for him to stop that. We built large cities. And look at some of the cities on this earth and the populations. But it was because it was all about the advancements of mankind. He had a concern here about what was possible and how quickly man would advance and realize these things thousands of years ago. So he delayed it. We're approaching that, I think. I preached a sermon. I was thinking about the Tower of Babel. I know I reference it from time to time. I reference the Tower of Babel, but I never preached this text. And when I reference it, it's almost always on sermons where I'm talking about the advancements of man, because that's what this topic is about. So I refer to it. But I haven't preached this text since I've been here. We've had, I think, at least one devotional given on it, no sermons. And I was thinking, when have I preached this? I went back. I never preached this text at Whittier. I preached it at San Fernando, but as I was thinking back, it was before I was their pastor, because it was the first time I preached in front of the St. Albans. Some of you might remember them, family that we had at San Fernando. So if I preached on Tower of Babel, probably 15 years ago. That was before I was called to San Fernando, 15, 16 years ago. So I went through my old notebooks, because I keep notebooks. I mean, this is my current notebook, but I have many of these through the years, a bunch. And went back to one that I thought was about that time frame, and I started going through, interested to see what I said about it, because I know my thinking process when I read the story. I think about technology and advancements. So before I was a pastor, so I'm probably 27 at the time, I found it in this old notebook. And I was going through the notes, and, time changed. 15 years of preaching, my notes don't look the same. I don't approach things quite the same way. My outlines look a lot different. My notes look a lot different. But I got down to these verses right here, and I was reading through my notes. And right after I read these verses, 15 years ago, visiting San Fernando, my notes said, again, I didn't bring them, so it said something like, technology is scary. I was thinking, 15 years ago, I was preaching the same thing 15 years ago. Nothing changes. 15 years, and I'm still preaching the same sermon. But I found it so interesting to go over those notes, because I was looking at the things, and it wasn't so much the things that were going on that was wrong. It was how quickly things were changing. And I was thinking, man, the world is changing so quickly. Look at how quickly these things are becoming, dominating our lives. And so some of the notes, I wrote down a few points I made just as I was highlighting technological advancements. And I looked it up, that that year, that 1 out of every 8 marriages in 2007, we'll say that. I think that's the year it was. 1 out of 8 marriages, the couple had met online. And that's not too weird, because back then we had AOL and we had chat things, but that's about the limit of most people's internet usages. I mean, 2007, I guess there's enough, there was plenty there, but a lot of what we have today wasn't there. We didn't have smartphones. There was no dating apps and stuff, but people would chat. Well, today it's 1 out of every 4 marriages. So 1 out of every 8, 15 years ago, today, 1 out of every 4 marriages that are taking place, they met online. At least that's what I looked up. And so we see in 15 years, that number, the percentage has doubled. I wrote down at the time, and again, this is just one search engine, but I wrote down and I was wrong. I wrote down like 2.7 or 2 point something billion Google searches a month. That was old data, because I looked this up yesterday. What was the 2007 Google amount of Google searches. I mean, it was closer to 1 billion a day. So I was wrong. I thought it was I was scared because of how many people were using the internet constantly, that over 2 billion a month. And I was significantly off. It was 1 billion a day, and that's just one search engine today. It's Google alone. There are 8.5 billion searches, and how much that's changing. And I'm not knocking it, because I'm responsible for about 5 or 6 of those a day. I think we probably are here. At least Google's our main search engine. You pull out your phone, you have a question, you Google it. And I don't have a problem with these things. It's like people meet and get married. I'm happy for them. And the internet's great. Google's great. We can look things up. We have a question, we can find it out. But you can also imagine how these things, as they're becoming more and more, they're dominating our life. They have grown substantially in the last 15 years. We don't even think. It's okay if you got a question on something to go to Google, but that's how we respond to things. What does the internet say? Siri, what does Siri say? What does Alexa say? We just ask all our questions to our devices and we Google everything. And I don't know, I think there's obviously a lot of innocence and it's fine, but there's also, it's kind of scary because it might be why our country is so divided and why people are so divided, because the internet tells you how to think, how to feel, what's right, what's wrong, and people just accept it and go along with it. We're finding this out. They're perfectly acceptable with just doing what they're told and being a sheep and not thinking for themselves, being told. And the internet is shaping the world to be people who just go along with whatever they're told. They just believe it. Our governments use it. We're finding this out. The governments use the internet as a tool to control what people think. We're finding this out as all this information's coming out from Twitter. Twitter was almost basically being ran by the government to tell people what you can and can't say, and to make sure that only their narrative, the FBI and the CIA and the liberal left, only their message was being out and controlling what people saw and therefore what they thought. And so we see the way the governments are using the internet to shape people's mind. People so quickly to just turn. And again, nothing wrong with Googling things, but we need to make sure we're not just using the internet. The one that I found the most enjoyable when I was looking through my notes was I was just looking at how much our world had changed. So my notes, and I don't have any information to verify this other than my notes. I wouldn't have made it up, but at the time I was talking about MySpace. There's 106 registered MySpace users. 106 million. That's what I was talking about. So I looked it up, Facebook users. And I know a lot of young people don't use Google, but according to the information I looked up last night, there's 2.98 billion monthly active users. That's like approaching half the world actively using Google, Facebook every month, at least once a month. Monthly active users, 2.98. I was concerned about 106 million. And today, 3 billion people are using Facebook. That's crazy. How much? Think about how different the world is. How many people, that's their form of communication. That's how they interact with one another, through social media. That's just one social media. So can't imagine if we were to include all the other ways that people communicate. I was talking, and I don't have a reference point for this, but I found it funny. I was looking at projections that by 2013, so this would be like 6 years later, by 2013, we have computers that can calculate, what was my exact verbiage? I wrote it down. That computers will exceed human computation. It's like, yeah, we have computers that are far beyond mankind. And 2023, everyone's going to have a computer that's, we'll talk about AI in a second, but yeah, artificial intelligence is far surpassing mankind in every category. And I was also looking at, just as a reference point, we think about different countries and their poverty status. I've been in the Philippines, and I've seen the drastic difference between the way they live and the way we live. Our pastors there, our church members there, and their living conditions, and drastically different. It puts things in perspective about how wealthy we are. We think we're poor because we don't have as much as that guy or that person or but we're so wealthy here. But they all have phones. Everybody there has a smartphone. And so I looked it up. I mean, 7.26 billion people on the earth have smartphones. That's over 90% of the earth have smartphones today. And that's, I mean, even places in poverty, they have cheap smartphones. Everybody has a smartphone. And then we have, satellites linking everyone together. So this one also caught me. And this is where I'll end my old notes. But I found a lot of them kind of funny because 15 years ago, the things that, how much things have changed. But I came across some information 15 years ago that they are predicting that in the future, maybe not too far out, about a decade or two, that humans will begin implanting microchips in brains. So this past week, Elon Musk announced that they're going to start human testing for Neuralink in the next 6 months. Like that's 15 years ago. It was the science fiction. One day, guys, they're going to be putting microchips in our brain. I didn't know what they would be doing with it. I thought it was more about heightening our intelligence or giving more brain functions. We have only limited percentage of the brain that we're using, and who knows what they'll do with it. And we're finding out. And yeah, I mean, the microchips are going to be a huge blessing for those that have strokes, suffering from strokes, and have Parkinson's and things like that, where your brain's signals aren't firing right or being received right. And so people that have these neural problems, and that's why no one's even really challenging. Everything's just kind of being pushed through pretty quickly through the processes of testing, because this could be a huge breakthrough for a lot of medical needs. Microchips that Neuralink will insert into your brain will be able to help you with some health problems, and that's great. In fact, Brother Miller has a type of this. It helps steady his what does he have? Parkinson's, right? I don't know. Sometimes I get that and multiple sclerosis mixed up. So that's great, but we also know if you listen at all, you hear any of his interviews, we know what the plan is. It's all about advancing man to integrate technology into our genetic makeup, to give us a stronger source of computer interaction. We want to interface with electronics. It's the future of the world. It's going to far surpass us in everything through AI and all the different advancements. We need a better way to interface with it because our thumbs and our fingers just aren't fast enough. And so that's the idea of brain implants, that you can control your electronic device just by thinking it. So you'll just be able to think it and it'll happen. And that's not like 20 years out, and human testing for the medical purposes are 6 months, and not long after they want to start rolling out the other advantages that it can provide. And we could go on and on about this, and it's not about that. I don't want to make this a sermon about everything going on in the world, but it is scary stuff. And this is the point of the sermon. God stopped the Tower of Babel because there was a point that man would reach that he would not allow. There's some things that are unnatural. You got to think there's a point in advancement that he will not allow us to reach. Otherwise, why stop us thousands of years ago? Why not just let things unfold? Maybe he has a different plan, but in my mind, there are some things that we're starting to realize that I don't think God can allow. And, we have it's not Oculus anymore, is it? It's a Meta Quest virtual reality thing. We've had one for a couple of years, and it's fun, and we have fun. You can go up and experience Mount Everest. You can look at the peak, and you can look around, and you can see. You don't feel, your senses. Some people really get fooled by it. You ever see the internet videos where we're in the set, and then it's a thing where they're walking a plank, and then in real life they dive into the wall. So people do mistake VR for real life, but everything you experience in life, you hearing me, you seeing me, you feeling your pew, it's all signals in your brain telling you these things. That's why people come up with all these fantasies of the Matrix and different ways that our reality could be fake. But we know it's real because we know God is real. It's the one thing that stabilizes all the ways that I could think about this, kind of grounds me, is that we know the Lord is real. But everything you hear, see, taste, feel, all brain signals. And when there's something in your brain that can give you those signals, that means you can experience anything you want. And that's where things I think I start drawing the line. I mean, to experience it through a headset is one thing, but to actually experience someone else's experience because something has given you that experience. Actually, you will actually be experiencing it in real life, but it's not real, right? It's not real, but it is real. So there's so many other things, the idea of downloading experiences, uploading consciousness, and all the different save states that you can, with your memories, you can give yourself memories that aren't there. You can take away memories you don't. All sorts of craziness that they talk about, not science fiction, real things happening. And again, we talk about them all the time, so I'll just leave it at that. AI, I love watching the different, YouTube videos or TikToks of people that use AIs to create those pictures or the art, or, AI can do everything. Create pictures, it can create art, and you tell it what you want to see. You just tell AI, I want to see Abraham Lincoln wearing Santa Claus outfit, riding a moose, and it will generate a picture of Abraham, instantly. So whatever you can think of, AI can produce it. And here's the thing though, and Derek shared with me a video where there's AI now that will write your essays. So a kid can say a 6th grade essay on the Civil War, and then it will, in the likeness of a 6th grade writing, produce a essay that is a 6th grader writing about the Civil War. So they're talking about it because it's going to be a huge problem for our education systems, because when kids can just, we've had, when I was a kid, you go into your encyclopedia and you would just write down what it says, but you're not supposed to do. But now you can just generate something new with an AI, just generate it. It's not forgery or whatever it's called. Not forgery, whatever it's called, whenever you plagiarism. You just create new things. I saw a video on a computer program, an AI that actually writes computer programs. So you can tell it what you want, and it will immediately write a computer program to accomplish whatever you want. So the world is quickly changing through, especially artificial intelligence, and it's quickly surpassing man in everything. And we'll just defer to it. It knows better already. It can do things that we can't. What do I want to eat? And it probably knows what I want to eat. I struggle with that in my household. I might solve some fights in our house. AI, what should we eat tonight? And it can just tell us, so we don't have to figure it out. But obviously, and we'll get past this. One last thought: quantum computers. That when AI is integrated into quantum computers, it's a thing that most people aren't familiar with, but it's just quantum physics computer that are developed out of quantum physics, and it's not a step past what we deal with. It's a leap. It's like we're etching technology forward, but quantum computers is futuristic, and it can do things. And the idea of, we'll just leave it at this: the idea of bending space, science fiction, but it's not anymore. The idea of creating wormholes and portals, it's not just an imaginative thing. It's actually a thing. And these are things that I think can't be allowed. They're unnatural. God gave us things to govern existence. He created space, he created time, he created matter, and we're messing with those things. And we think, well, you can't change time. There's things that affect time, gravity being one of those things, and how quantum physics can affect time. How long until they're tampering with that? Now, obviously, God can never allow. And we just think that these things are foreign, but there's so much being uncovered right now that is happening that I think, as I talk about technology, it's all to this end. How much longer until the Lord has to come and stop it? He did it at the Tower of Babel. He stopped it because he saw where it was going. But the Tower of Babel, the advancements of man are today. What he was stopping then is happening now, and it's coming. The Lord must put a stop. Look at the world. We talk about sin. We talk about being given over to the flesh. We talk about people and they have no love for God, desire for God. And a good portion and reason for that is the advancements of man. We're creating a God to serve in technology. And pretty soon we'll reach a point when we are no longer creating it, but it is creating itself. And at that point, it's no longer man that is in charge, it's computers. We've created something to govern our existence. We've replaced God with another God. And of course, compared to us, it would be godlike. But, God has all power and understanding, and God can turn it all off at a thought. But we are creating a God to serve. And again, we already do. We serve it. We don't realize it. That's the point of my sermon. Are we serving the world and not even realizing it? Are we allowing these advancements to rule in our life? Is it separating us from God? And to what extent? And what do we do about it? What does the Lord say? Remember Lot's wife. We start looking to the world and the things of the world to govern our life. When she had to leave Sodom, she looked back because she missed the things of the world. And again, we have to be a people who have separated ourselves, at least in heart. We have to make sure we have to keep that part in check. Are we allowing technology and advancements to reign and rule our life? Is it harming your relationship with God? I would say it's harming all of our relationship with God because it's a part of our life. Therefore, yes, it is. But to what extent and how much can we do to, again, to moderate this in our homes and in our lives to make sure that we are governing it and ruling over it instead of it over us? Man focuses on building up man. We are building the Tower of Babel. And again, this is a place that not only for men to look at and say, man, look what they've built. It's going to be a thing that people serve. It's an idol. The Tower of Babel is a technological idol, and man is building it as we speak, and the Lord will stop it. Of course, as the world focuses on building up their tower, we need to be focused on building up our house. And that's the thing. We need to make sure that our focus isn't where they're building up man and their tower, but we're building up the house of God. Let's look at Matthew chapter 16. We could go on and on about this. I'm not like someone that loves technology. I guess I'm not one of those techie people. We don't have a lot of those things. I don't keep up on the newest iPad. I don't keep up on the newest iPhone. I don't even know what they do. But I do watch these advancements that I think are going to change the world drastically in ways that I find to be a perversion of nature. And I think we all should at least be somewhat aware, because it's a thing we need to be careful about, but it's a huge sign of the times and where we're at in the grand scheme of things. The world has gone through many turbulent times and times where we thought the world was coming to an end soon. Many generations, if not every, thought they were the last. But and I don't even know what could. I don't think anything can stop technology at this point, unless there was a huge reset technologically speaking. The days of man are numbered and we're approaching the end. Because again, what we're about to do, I don't even think we know how to handle it. And I don't think we could do things to we could mess up our reality in ways that we don't understand. And I just don't think it's natural, some of these things. Matthew chapter 16, as we focus on what we are to be focused on, as we look at what we're supposed to be focused on, Matthew chapter 16, and we'll just make few points on some of these verses. Matthew 16, verse 15, he said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus said to him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father who was in heaven. I also say to you that you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." And so we see as the Lord gives us this great gift of his church. On this rock, I build my church. The world is building up their church. It's a religion. Technology, again, a lot of wokeness, a lot of it is all religion. Even abortion has become a religion. You see people protesting abortion. Get the things go, not abortion itself, but the Roe v. Wade stuff. And people just serve it mindlessly as a religion. but we are called to build up the house of God. This is our house, and we are to be building it, not allowing the world to shape us, not building their tower and house with them, but we are to be focused on this. As Derek said, so much we could be discouraged by. I'm not discouraged by the advancements of man. It's concerning, it's troubling, but our focus needs to be here as we identify the wickedness, the sin, the natural perversions, the perverting nature. And I don't mean that in just one way, but I mean in all ways, changing reality and our reality, our existence. Our focus needs to be here. And that's our calling until the Lord comes and he puts an end to it. The world is building up the tower, but the Lord commanded us to be fruitful, multiply. And that idea is not just a physical one for them, but a spiritual one for us. We are to be a fruitful people, bearing fruit unto God with our lives, multiplying, spreading the gospel. And our focus is to be doing what he commanded us to do and not settling down and being consumed with the advancements and pride of man as the rest of the world is caught up. If the world wants to sit and hunker down and shine let us go out and do what God called us to do and build up his house. And so we see the results of one house versus the other. Let's turn back to Matthew 7. There's two houses built in Matthew 7. And again, we know our house was built on the foundation of Christ, and it will not fall. Matthew 7, verse 24. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and acts on them may be compared to a wise man and who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against the house, and yet it did not fall, for it had been founded on the rock. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and slammed against the house, and it fell, and great was its fall. And the Tower of Babel is being built, but it's being built on sand, and it will not stand the trials, and it will not stand the judgments of God when he returns. It's all coming down. But our house is being built up on the rock, the foundation of Jesus Christ. And he cannot deny himself, a foundation that is firm and sound. And so as we build up on this house, and we're careful about how we build up on it, but let us build it up and acknowledge that we are building a house that will stand the test of time, that will stand into the ages of the ages and will never end, a house that will not fall. That's we could use this to talk about our church. Certainly our church is built on the foundation of Christ, but is our life being built up on Christ? We have a choice. How do you build your family? Is your family and your culture inside your home, is it built on the foundation of godly principles? Is it one that has been built on the rock? Is it a house that will stand the tests and trials and struggles that certainly will befall all of us, as Derek was talking about? Everyone's going to face hardships. But the rock that stands, the house that stands on the rock, is a house of joy in which we celebrate the strength and the blessed hope that we have. So I hope that your house is, I hope that your life is. Technology the advancements of man is what most people are building up their life on. It's where they look to for their joy and their contentment and peace. And I suppose that one day, and again, depending on when the Lord stops it, we're only like, a year or two until there's a lot of hospitals that are going to resort to artificial intelligent doctors. You put in your symptoms and it can tell you what you got. So it'll be better. It'll be better. Why use humans when we have AI that are better? There'll be a global, and eventually roll it out to where all the hospitals in the world. And so it has all the information of all health problems, and it can make diagnosis more accurately. And so in every way, AI is going to rule over mankind. Going to diagnose you. It's can tell you where you should live, what you're good at, where you should work. It's going to rule over us in every way, and it's going to cure our diseases. Quantum computers and AI is going to cure all our diseases. It's going to give us. It's going to provide us probably the means to have sustainable food and energy and all the things that man are looking to give. The stability, again, that Derek was talking about. Man wants stability, and technology is going to give it. But all these things that man is looking for, God already offers. In fact, he offers it in a way that's far greater. When we talk about, going back to last week, talk about people being healed from blindness, but still struggling mentally. But when God heals, it's perfect. And we look at the blessings of man, but it still leaves us wanting, and it's not perfect. God's healing and help is. One house, let me get past this point. The world is building up a house, and they think it will stand, but it will not. They're building up a strong house, a tower that they think will be something for the ages, and yet when the storm comes, it will fall. Is your house built on the rock? Is your life being built on Jesus Christ, or are you building your life up and its stability on the advancements of man? Let's look back at Genesis 11. I'll bring this to a close. I took too long to get here, and so we're going to have to just quickly mention this. Genesis chapter 11, as we finish the story, verse 7. So God sees their advancements, and he recognizes, I got to stop it. Come, verse 7, come, let us go down there and confuse their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad, and they're over the face of the whole earth, from there over the face of the whole earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore, its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the whole earth. Let me just make this point, because there's some things to say about this, but the word Babel means confusion. There's a result. We see in this one story, there is a result of pride, there's the result of disobedience, and there's a result to serving yourself in this life, and that is confusion and judgment, disorder and confusion. Or we could say division, confusion and division. The result of serving yourself, the result of elevating yourself, leaves you wanting, leaves you without. But on the flip side of that, the result of humility and obedience and serving God is order. It brings unity, and it brings peace, and it brings in the Spirit of God. In this case, the Spirit of God's poured out on them, right? God's poured out on them, and he gives them a tongue of confusion. He scatters their tongues. They're confused. And from that day forward, it's taken us thousands of years to get past this, thousands of years to get back to a point through technology, right? That's all this is undoing God in every way that we can. And so we can just talk into our phone, and they can speak to someone. There's no more confusion of tongue. But God poured out his Spirit and brought confusion. God brought judgment. God judges pride. God judges disobedience. And the result of it is confusion and division. But the result of humility and obedience and serving God is order, unity. And it is the Spirit of God being poured out in a way that gives us blessings. Let's turn in closing to the book of Acts. Just read 4 more verses here. Shortly after the Lord was crucified, 3 days later, he ascended and rose from the grave. And the day that he from the day that he rose from the grave, 50 days later, there was a religious holiday called Feast of Weeks, or as we sometimes refer to it as the Day of Pentecost. It was a Sunday morning, just like this, and they were meeting together as they were the new norm to meet together on Sundays. So on the first day of the week, as they were assembled together, the Lord's Spirit was poured out on them. Acts chapter 2, verse 1, when the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place, and suddenly there came from heaven a noise like a violent rushing wind, and it filled the whole house where they were sitting. And there appeared to them tongues as of fire distributing themselves, and they rested on each one of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak with other tongues as the Spirit was giving them utterance. This were tongues of confusion. These were tongues and gifts that God had given them in order to preach, in order to reach those that spoke other languages. And so we see very opposite sides of the coin. One house that will not stand. It's built on the dirt, on the sand. One house that stands because it's built on the rock. We see the result of God when there's judgment being poured out and there's confusion, there's disorder. It's the result of pride. It's the result of serving this world. It leaves us wanting. There's no peace in it. It leaves us confused, leaves us angry, leaves us wanting. But through obedience, doing what God had commanded them to do as they met together, serving God, worshiping God, his Spirit was poured out and gave them tongues of understanding that were things that allowed them to reach others. Blessings, God blessed them. And so we see the two opposite ways that God responds, one to the Tower of Babel and one to the house of God. Is your house, is your life built on the house that will stand? Is your house being blessed with the Spirit of God? Is it being poured out into your life? If not, maybe we're looking too much to the world. The teachings of man would teach us that building up your life gives you happiness. The teachings of religion, even the religions of man, teach you that good works will put you in a place of glory, that there's hope beyond this life if you do good with your life. But that's not what the Bible teaches. It does teach us to do good. It does teach us to do good with the life that he's given us. But before we can live for God, we must be born again. The gift of life does not come through works. It doesn't come by building up a Tower of Babel in your life. It doesn't come by fame and fortune. It doesn't come by good deeds. The grace and the life that God has for you is given by grace. Ephesians 2:8-9. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of works, not of yourself, lest any man should boast. Not of yourself, not of works, lest any man should boast. And so if you have a need to have God come into your life this morning, if you've never experienced His saving grace, don't worry about your good works. You need to put your trust in Jesus Christ. If you've been born again, if you've trusted in the Lord and put your faith in Him, then again, now we're building up our life in Him. Where are you building your life? Is it in the principles and teachings of the Lord? Is it on Him? Is it in your faith in Him? Or is it in your faith in the advancements of man? Where do we look to in times of need? When you're sick, it's okay to go to a doctor. But before you go to a doctor, you should be going to the Lord. Are we going to the Lord? Are we depending on Him? Or are we looking to man and advancements to bring us safety and peace and happiness? Let's stand and have a verse of song.
Turn to page 104. One zero four. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take Him at His word, just to rest upon His promise, just to know thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust Him, how I prove Him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to trust His cleansing blood, just in simple faith to plunge me 'neath the healing cleansing flood. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust Him, how I proved Him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more.
Thank you for your attentiveness, and I'm glad that those that are sick were able to tune in. That's another technical advancement. Again, it could be a blessing for us, but it could also, if we abuse it, and it's better to be in the house of the Lord, right? So there's a blessing in being able to tune in when we can't be here, but it's better to be in the house of the Lord. And I'm glad that those that could tune in were able to, and I'm glad that those that are here are here. And so may the Lord in some way bless you with this morning's sermon. I pray that, trust that he can. Feel a little bit off today. I woke up yesterday sick. It was so stuffed up. My sinuses were flaring. I thought, man, I don't know what I'm gonna do about tomorrow. I guess I'll deal with it then. And I woke up feeling a lot better today, but I just feel a little bit cloudy. So hopefully everything I said made sense. In any case, any last thoughts, any prayer requests, anything before we go to the Lord? Today is just a normal day. Get food. We'll come back here and we'll have a second service. And, got nothing else to say to that. So if there's no other words, no other prayer requests, let's go ahead and bow our heads. Brother Russell, would you dismiss us, please?
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for everything you give us. And just thank you for allowing us to just gather in your house one more time, hear your word, Lord. Please just let it touch our hearts and just be the lesson that we need to hear for the week, Lord. Please keep everyone on the road safe today, Lord, and just help everyone just come back for second service. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen.
Amen.